Welcome back. We are looking forward to begin a brand new Igeris, a brand new epistle, which is the 11th Yud Aleph Lahaskilcha Bina, to teach you some understanding, to provide for you, to give a little seichel, a little perspective, perception. What is the Alter Rebbe teaching us over here? Laskil Chabina, known to be a very fundamental Pedic, to be more accurate, a very fundamental Igeres, letter. There's so much written about it, about this very Igeres HaKedesh Yud Aleph. It's worthwhile to listeners over here, those following the class, to do some research on your own, because there's many stories and which are very poignant and describing very much the connection to this very, or the message in this very chapter, in this very Geras, that is, because you could even say it's a game changer, even for the Eved Hashem, even for the one who serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a game changer, and therefore there's so much written about it. Like I say, you can do your own research, which is of course so easy today, as we have access to so much with a click of a button, with the click with your finger, and so. We'll get right into it. But again, I not only perhaps suggest, but really encourage to see what are some backdrops and the famous anecdotes which are aligned and demonstrate the very important message of the Alter Rebbe in this Igeris. And a lot is written about it. And the average Chassid, someone who learns Tanya in general, Yud Aleph, Igeris HaKedesh, you'd wake him up at any time in the middle of the night. Laskil Chabina. Everybody knows Laskil Chabina, because really it's a game changer. It's a game changer even for the Eved Hashem. Underscoring this, even for someone who is one who serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu, adherent to the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the word of Torah, mitzvahs, lives his life al pi Chassidus, particularly Chassidus Chabad, live a life based on the message or the guide of Sefer Tanya Kadisha, which is not just a few suggestions, but the manual, as we mentioned many times, the perfect manual to our Avodas Hashem. Even someone who lives a life based on all this, Laskil Chabina is even a game changer for him and her. That's pretty much a strong statement, because living a life with the spirit of Chassidus, the spirit of Tanya, Kadisha, how could it be a real game changer? It could be something which apparently one would suggest, it's another addition, like every Geras has its message. It's another addition to the Eved Hashem, to the one who serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But you could say, justifiably say, game changer, because the Alter Rebbe really establishes something over here which you didn't. These words, quite strong, if you will, you don't find nowhere in Tanya, for that matter. This expression, actually, the very beginning, a person should have any ratzon, no desire matters of Ilam Hazeh. So you're talking the message of establishing superiority to Torah over matters of Ilam Hazeh, not to pay much attention. Just Alter Rebbe does have it actually quite a few times in Tanya itself. He get us how do we look at matters of Elam Hazeh. So the whole Tanya is telling us we're here with that unique mandate of establishing for HaKadosh Baruch Hu an abode in this very physical world. So, of course, it's an immediate change of perspective that we're here not to benefit from matters of Elam Hazeh, but it's a matter of taking matters of Elam Hazeh and transforming it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but nonetheless doesn't negate so much our connection to this world. So, of course, it comes along with a message. It's about perspective. But nonetheless, you could say someone takes his life of comfort, even minimal comfort, which a person needs one way or another, and maintains that perspective and knows throughout every day, every hour, every minute, every second, every millisecond is that I'm here in a mandate to transform, to make this world a dwelling place for Hashem and abode for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So of course it changes perspective. Instead of focusing on Elam Hazeh on its own, but matters of Elam Hazeh, these again worldly comforts, if you will, or comforts associated with the domain which we live in, which is Elam Hazeh. Neshama has entered into a body which finds itself in this very physical world, but nonetheless, it's not about in all these chapters. It doesn't underscore so much the negation or the disinterest. It's kind of, matter of fact. You're here. Hopefully, you'll have all the brachas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but make sure to maintain perspective. And even in Geras HaKodesh, and when things go a little bit different, a little bit wrong, you have the famous Rahman al-Itzlan, again, shall it be only in theory and concept, but famous chapter in Chavav in Igeres in Likutei Amarim, the first segment. So just to come off a little bit over here, we do mention it many times at the very beginning of the class. Igeres HaKodesh is the fourth segment of Tanya. Tanya has 5. There's the Likutei Amarim, Shayich Bemuno, Igeres HaTshuva, and Igeres HaKodesh. We merited to conclude all the previous chapters, all the previous segments, that is, and we do cross-reference many times because Divrei Torah Aniyim b'makom echad ashirim b'makom sheni. It was many times something is mentioned in a particular chapter with brevity, succinctly, as opposed to in other places it's elaborated on. So it's good to know, and we do mention that the whole site which you're watching this, or wherever you're watching the study, we do point out there is an advantage of following it on the original website, tanyaonline.com. One word, Tanya Online. That is tanyaonline, one word.com. It has the advantage that it's easy to follow, as the text is in a separate scroll bar. But namely, it has all the classes lined up on the left side of the screen, which come up in the same fashion, and as such easy to access. All the previous classes from the very beginning of Likutei Amarim. So, of course, I say this, try to say this speak about this, mention it, and understandably for the newcomers. But in this case, it's worthwhile to see the Alter Rebbe's Perek Chavav. It's the second part of Perek Chavav. We did mention in different times, Alter Rebbe very infrequently divided the chapters. I believe in Likutei Amarim there's only 4 chapters of the 53 that are divided in different paragraphs. Chavav is one of them. So the second part, Perek Chavav, the first part of the second paragraph deals with matters that when things don't go exactly right on a physical level. And Chas v'Shalom, somebody, a Yid in Elam Hazeh, is enduring difficulties, experiencing difficulties, and God forbid that people are really suffering in Elam Hazeh. There are people suffering again. There's wide ranges of which the Alter Rebbe is referring to that very chapter, but it covers every matter of enduring pain in this very physical world. Again, shall it only remain, we bless every Yid individually. We bless. Am Yisrael blesses every Yid individually, and collectively all of Am Yisrael, that this should remain in concept. And on the ground, in actuality, in reality, things should only be the Tov Hanir of Anigla, in apparent good, in a revealed good, and so on. But the Alter Rebbe deals with this idea, and again puts perspective. But nonetheless, even there, he doesn't come across so strong as he comes in this period, as we will see. Hence the expression of game changer. You could even say a game changer. Again, as we will see, as we learn this, it's comes across very bold, if you will, the Alter Rebbe's message here. But let's see what the end Alter Rebbe himself, as he presents the information in this very Geras, comes around and it says, once you have perspective, things will turn out just right. But what is strong and a bit bold is our initial approach, the approach of the Eved Hashem. What is he meant to look out for as he navigates Olam Hazeh in the special, unique shlichus mandate he or she has in the time that Hashem gave them, him or her, in this very physical world. Larichas yamim b'shanim tevis u'mavurachis. Well, that even in Geras HaKodesh, Dr. Rebbe has it later also, in earlier also, sometimes quite strong. Pedic test, for example, we learned it. It's a click away. A Geras test. That the ninth epistle, Dr. Rebbe comes across quite demanding as well. If you followed, or again, it's a click away, and you get in this very segment, you get us HaKodesh, the ninth, get us tests, but nothing comes close to the Alter Rebbe's message over here in Igeres Yud Aleph. I want to just, before we begin, I want to mention that this segment, Igeres HaKodesh, is unique in its kind, distinct in the previous segments, quite distinct of the previous segments. The fact that it's divided, that in other words, there's no real connection between one Igeres and the other, as it is. It's Igeres HaKodesh. The letters, the holy letters of the Alter Rebbe, letters written to beginning and an end. It's not connected, for that matter, at different times. For that matter, there's certain letters in this segment that a previous letter was written after a subsequent letter. So at different times, different messages, even though we did mention there is a common thread through Igeres HaKodesh and the overall, or one idea, to say it a little more accurately, one idea is more underscored than any other, even though which is the mitzvah of tzedakah, and the different perspective on the mitzvah of tzedakah, like we just learned in the 10th Igeres, which we just came from, a relatively lengthier Igeres. There was quite a few classes on this Igeres, this ladder. So it really revolutionizes the whole idea of giving tzedakah, and again he points out that there's a different message within the mitzvah of tzedakah, which is not confined to the mitzvah of tzedakah. On the ground, it's actually, in actuality, is of course it's giving extended from yourself, from your money, and providing for the other, but it's out of the framework of tzedakah, a different framework of tikkun nefesh, and it has ramifications, how much one can give. For that matter, there is no limit that one is meant to give, to extend their charity vis-a-vis the mitzvah of tzedakah itself. There are parameters like any other mitzvah. In the case of mitzvah tzedakah, 10% is an obligation, 20% is a mitzvah min hamufchar, the choicier way to give tzedakah. But then there's another idea of tzedakah of tikkun nefesh. There is no limit. Again, we had this over here in this very previous Igeres. So you do find a common thread throughout, or one mitzvah which is underscored throughout all the Igeres. And again, there's a backdrop. We did mention it as well, of the Aliyah, but a Mendel Haradokar. But I'm going to send you right away to see a little bit different than the first segments, where it's sequential, because Aleph Beis, every chapter follows the previous. But again, instead of repeating this Igeres HaKodesh with the backdrop of it, even this idea of the Aliyah of the Mendel Haradokar and the students, you could see it in the very first chapter, first class, that is, of the latter Igeres of Yud, of the 10th. We gave a little bit of backdrop of Igeres HaKodesh. We did it periodically before, but it definitely, I'm pretty much sure. Yeah, I did mention it in the first, we spoke about it a bit in the first class of this previous Igeres, the 10th. So it's really a click away. So let's try to begin this very Igeres with this bit of introduction, but it's an important introduction, as we will see. Though it's important to mention that the end, in the beginning, the Alter Rebbe, to the Ovid Hashem, to the Yid, the Alter Rebbe has a very strong message. Together with that, the Alter Rebbe says once we put things in perspective, things will turn around as well and manifest in the way that is it will manifest in good, which is tangible, palpable good that we consider good. Again, apparent good, revealed good, and so on. So in order to have a total appreciation of this chapter, hold on tight, because we got to get all the way till the very end to stand back and say, okay, I know what I need to do, or maybe not to focus on, but in the end of the day, Hashem wants perspective. The big part of this message is, the message of this Igeres is that Hashem desires perspective from every Yid individually, and once there is that perspective, Hashem knows what to do and will follow suit. So let's begin. Let's gil chabino. As we mentioned, Alter Rebbe is teaching us understanding in matters, perspective, perception. This is not the way the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu would dwell. The one would desire life of flesh, literally translated, that our aspiration, our desire would be for physical life, ubana, healthy children, healthy on all levels, physically healthy, emotionally healthy, psychologically healthy, good, gesunte Kinder, healthy children, umezaina, and sustenance, parnasa, livelihood. That's not what a Yid has to aspire to. Yeah, that's pretty strong, right? But let's see what the Alter Rebbe is saying. We all look for the Yishkin Eirav Hashem, right? That's what we are aspired to. Hashem's light should dwell upon us, me, in other words, us as individuals, and collectively in all of Am Yisrael. That's what we're here for. That's why the Neshama is here, to bring the Eir Hashem onto himself, and to his society, and the world in its entirety. In every single Yid, there should be the manifestation of the Eir Hashem. So a person could say, okay, with my brachas that Hashem gives me, I will serve Hashem. Hashem gives me life. Hashem gives me healthy children. Hashem gives me parnassus. So I'm going to stay focused and learn Torah and do mitzvahs and educate my children to go in the ways of Hashem. And I'm going to have a full package of the Eir Hashem, the light of Hashem, coming and residing within me. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense for that matter. Comes the Alter Rebbe says, keep your eyes on the focus. Make sure you don't remove your eyes from the focus. And ultimately the mandate for which you were sent into this world. To establish a home and domicile for HaKadosh Baruch Hu through learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. Anything else, don't pay attention to it at all. Don't make a package, Hashem, okay, I'm going to have this comfort, I'm going to aspire to this comfort. Of course, I'll imbue this comforts with the Eid of Torah and the Eid of mitzvahs. And I'm going to make sure my life is one beautiful package. A lichtige package for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I need my parnassus, it should go well, and I need healthy children. Of course, I want to educate a healthy family with a healthy perspective and a healthy lifestyle, which is, of course, the lifestyle of Torah mitzvahs. I need to be gesund myself. So I aspire to that together with perspective. Part of my desires, part of my motives are aligned with my chaya, bona, chaya, mezayna, with the brachas which are associated with matters of Elam Haza. Comes the Alter Rebbe and it says, no. It's not the way that the Eir Hashem would dwell. Don't make packages. Don't group things together in your mind. Don't make deals and packages with Hashem. At all, for that matter. Don't even desire don't even desire health and healthy children and a good livelihood. And this is the Chazal tell us, our sages, the blessed memory tell us, annul your desire for a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Not infuse your desire or the matters for which you aspire to and Hashem gives you, and imbue them and infuse them with a godly message. With learning Torah, even lots of Torah, doing mitzvahs, lots of mitzvahs, doing them with perfection and beauty and so on. But batal ritzeincha means don't have any desires in matters of Olam Hazeh at all. Your desire should completely be annulled, meaning to say that it should be kind of a non-existent to the fullest degree. You should not have any desire in matters of this physical world. Anything associated with this physical world, which is generally grouped in, or generally bana, in other words, it encompasses the three, which is bana chayim zayna. Healthy children, health for yourself, and livelihood. Don't have any desire in that. Like it says, which are included in bana chayim zayna, in healthy children, life, and livelihood. Like the Chazal tell us, you're living in this world. It's not like, oh, we gave you a little choice, or we gave you a choice in the onset, and you're not so satisfied with the choice, and therefore you're perhaps complaining, lamenting, and so on. But there's room at least to lament because you were given a choice, so there was some dependence, so you could reflect on yourself. Did I choose right? I didn't choose right. Chazal tells us, no, there's no starting point over here. Bal korcha chatochai. You are here because Hashem sent you here. And we all know, we weren't given a choice to be born. For that matter, the Gemara says, Ashmi shaloi. Better if we never came into the picture. But if we did, of course, we're not only going to make the best out of it, we're going to realize, for that matter, there's a certain advantage that it's only about God putting me here. So, of course, my entire, like the Alter Rebbe writes in the end of a beautiful expression of the Alter Rebbe, worthwhile to see, L'kuti Amorim, towards the end of Pedic Lamed Aleph, the 31st chapter, L'chol b'hein chayiruchi v'nishmasi, and so on. Give everything back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because my being here is not my choice, it's about Him. So, in the end of the day, there's an accolade to that. There's an advantage to that. Not to go into it right now. We can understand it, at least subtly. It's L'kuti Amorim, the first segment at the end, towards the end of the 31st chapter. I believe the Alter Rebbe brings it elsewhere, but here the Alter Rebbe sums up a message. Because it's you before, it's you in the beginning, it's you in the after, and therefore really it's you in between, meaning to say as we exist in this world. So therefore, it's all about you, let me give everything back to you. A beautiful expression of the Alter Rebbe. And so there's an advantage to that, but on the ground, with the message over here, you weren't given a choice. And because you weren't given a choice, so why are you desiring matters that it is one way or another secondary to the one who chose you? Why did Hashem chose us to come into this world? That we should be gesund? That's why He chose us to come into this world? We would have been healthier in Gan Eden, neshama divested of body. There's no aches, there's no pains, there's no time of hunger, no time of thirst. You're really a free bird. You're neshama divested of body, of course. Even the most healthiest person, the most healthiest person in this world. At the end of the day, there's so much that the body demands of the person, and for that matter, quite a few times a day. Hungry, thirsty, and so on. A little vitamin and a little bit, sometimes something doesn't feel good, and a tahati and a little, as we know it. Everybody should be solely gesund and stark. But the body, the neshama prior to coming into the body, which was much healthier, if you will. Understandably so. Bone, we came to the world to have children on its own. There's enough neshamas up there. We don't need children, physical children, from the perspective of just having children. The fun of the extension of family. The delight. It's extraordinarily exciting. A child, a grandchild. That's not why Hashem sent us into this world. And Mizayna, livelihood, of course not. Because livelihood is what you need in this house. Pay a mortgage, and a car, and tuitions, and food, and so on. Neshama divested of body doesn't need none of that. Free tuition. It sits yeshvin v'neni b'ziv hashchina. Like someone said, oh, is there breaks in the yeshiva on high? You will need a break. Because it's all about, it's a delightful experience from the beginning to the end. Totally delightful. So yeshvin v'neni, that's it's a v'neni, they derive pleasure and delight from b'ziv hashchina, learning Torah on the levels of on high, which is a different type of Torah. It's the same Torah, understandably, but it's learned in a way, the way the Torah is learned in Gan Eden is a different quality of Torah. And it doesn't need to eat, doesn't need to drink, and no mortgages, and no cars, and everything. So, that's not why we were sent to this world, to have a parnasa. Understandably so. Bal korcha chatochai, Hashem took the neshama into this world to send it on this, with this divine mandate, to learn Torah and do mitzvahs, to establish a dira, a domicile for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, lo yizbarich. That's why you were sent over here, not for anything else. So because of that, Akar Chatachai, so you were sent exclusively for one idea, and you're desiring, and your other ideas, but I need that for my comfort in order to establish, or to be perfect, or to try to perfect or execute, starting from the execution of my mandate, to be successful with the execution of my mandate, and learning Torah to do mitzvahs, to perfect myself with it. I need all that stuff. I need all that stuff. The one who sent you here did not send you for any of that. So what do you mean you need? Why do you need? Who told you you need? You're here, al korchoch. You were forced, even if you will, coerced. It's a strong language, but perspective, of course. You were sent over here. Let's keep it to that. You were sent over here for a purpose. And that purpose is nothing associated with Bana Chayim Mezayna. So why do you have these desires? That's what Alter Rebbe says, Leila Shum Ratzin Klal, Batal Ritzeincha. Now one is going to of course argue, you've got to be kidding. How could you put on tefillin if you don't have a healthy hand? How could you learn Torah if you have a headache? Or if you're preoccupied and concerned about certain matters? How could you send your kids to yeshiva? You want to send them to the best yeshivas, you have to have a lot of parnasa, because tuition, because you have to pay a substantial tuition. And how could you learn the Blat Gemara if you didn't take your coffee that very morning, or have breakfast, or eat the apple in order to learn another hour or two? You can't divide. There can't be a dissonance between the mandate that we were sent to the way we perform, or the conditions, if you will, prerequisites in order to fulfill our mandate. And really, it's included in Bana Chayim Mezayna, in all the brachas. He has to be gesund, and he has to have healthy children, because he has to educate his children in the ways of Torah mitzvahs. They have to be healthy in all levels, physically, psychologically, emotionally. That person has to have a parnasa, and a grand parnasa, because there's so many expenses which a yid endures in order not stam to live the life of the dream of Elam Haza, but to the contrary, to be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with joy and gladness of heart and do what I have to do. You can't divide the two, apparently. Comes the Alter Rebbe and says, of course you can't divide the two. One needs to be healthy in order to do what they have to do. One needs a certain amount of money in order to do what they have to do, to implement, to execute their mandate in learning Torah and doing Hashem's mitzvahs, educating children in the proper way, understandably so. But don't ever, the message of Alter Rebbe is, don't ever get carried away with this, which is Hashem's occupation, if you will. It's in Hashem's hands to give you all this. We have to remain focused on one idea, and one idea only, solely on our mandate for which we came into this world. The fact that we need matters of Elam Haza, and even the comforts of Elam Haza, in order to execute our mandate, that's none of our business. None of our business means to say we can't stay focused on that. Not only not focused, but don't think about it at all. No desire at all. What Hashem has to do, whatever He provides for us. And the famous expression, the Rebbe in Yechidus once told somebody, it's a very beautiful Yechidus. Sometimes I heard this Yechidus differently, but if you go back to the Hayem Yem, you see that it wasn't like just someone was looking for some good stuff in his life. And the Rebbe says, you do what you have to do, what you are created for, and let Hashem do His job. This is somebody who was crying to the Alter Rebbe of, again, not to go into it now, but if you remember the story, those of you remember someone who was really crying to the Alter Rebbe that he needs help, not only for himself, his immediate family, but it was his nieces and nephews, which he needed to marry off. And even him, the Alter Rebbe said, you do what you have to do, and let Hashem look after what He has to look after. Which is, again, perspective. A lot of perspective in that little Hayem Yem. It's an anecdote, again, when you don't read it carefully, you think this person was just a self-centered individual. From a Yid, of course. Checklist was the checklist by him, perhaps a perfect checklist, or had the checklist marked perfectly, checked perfectly, but he liked a lot of stuff that the average human being desires and is inclined to. And Alter Rebbe told him, no, you focus on what you're meant to focus on, and Hashem will focus on what He, capital H, of course, is meant to focus on. The story is very different. This was a real chassid, a devout chassid, which knew what Darkei Achsidus is. He was crying to the Alter Rebbe. He had to help other members of his, not his immediate family, but other members of his extended family, which went through tragedy and they didn't have any means to get married and so on. But even this individual, the Alter Rebbe told him, you have to focus on this which you're meant to focus on, and Hashem will look after. And again, the end of the story is similar to this chapter. Everything worked out for him, for his family. You see, there's an extension to the story. For him, for his family, and of course for this which he wanted to accomplish, very similar to the ultimate message of the Alter Rebbe in this very chapter. Now, what is the difference if I stay focused on that, or I stay focused on perhaps a combination of both? Even 30%. Let me have this desire and speak about it and aspire to it. Maybe pray to Hashem. Part of my and this is for that matter. Our prayers are involved on matters which are meant to contribute to our comfort. And again, of course, as Yidden, to ultimately serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But we do focus a bit on it. Let it be 20%, so 80% on the mandate for which I was sent here for. 20%, 30%, somewhat. Let it be part of it. Let's be real. Let's be realistic. Comes the Alter Rebbe says no. And of course, the difference is stupendous. Because if we're solely focusing on this which we were created for, our devotion, our determination to do things right, may it be in every single area of learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, perfection in both of the above, meaning to say keeping to the time, the quantitative, in other words, the devotion of the time, the quantity of time which is designated for Torah, to utilize every moment. I'm just focusing on my mandate. To leave everything out at the time that I'm learning. because what's my business how things are going to turn out that day? Right now I have a mandate to learn Torah, so I sink into this sugya that I'm learning. If it's halach, if it's gemara, if it's rishonim, achreinim, chassidus, anything you're learning, nothing else is on your mind because you're focused solely on your mandate. The other stuff, not my business at all. Batal ritzeincha. Comes to a mitzvah, I'm involved in it. I don't cut corners. I do it correct. I do it with excitement. I do it with joy. I'm a hader the mitzvah. I'm nicer esrig, even though it's going to kvetch me a little more, or a lot more. I'll be a nicer pair of tefillin, a nicer mezuzah. Once one stays focused, once you mix in a bit of the other desires, it compromises the entire focus. Because 10%, as they say in Yiddish, there's expression sekrichta veremel. Once the worms start sneaking through, you find it here, you find it there, you find it at different places, and before you know it, it kind of took over all of the attention. Start with a little worm on the sideline of matters, and all of a sudden it's all over the place. Open up a can of worms, but that's a bit different. It's a different idea. That's perhaps a different idea. Krichta veremel, because it's silent. It's just moving on the side, very much on the side, not causing any diversion of any attention at all. But Seitan Krichna veremel, all of a sudden the worm starts creeping all over the place. As we know it, if we pay a little attention, a little too much attention, all of a sudden we turn around. Really, this was what I was involved with. To making sure this is perfect and that's perfect, that perfect. So of course it diverts my attention from my mandate for which I was sent into this world. To establish for HaKadosh Baruch Hu a dwelling place in this world. As opposed to someone shuts it out completely, it's a different type of Avodas Hashem. Totally. And again, there's so many stories, especially from Chassidim of the yesteryears. Present doesn't mean yesteryears to the exclusion. We say yesteryears is not categorically, it's of course excluding the present, but it means those who taught us the Darkei Chassidus, and of course guided by our holy Rabbi Seinu Nisienu, and other holy Yidden, which guided their flock in ways to divert their attention away from in Yanim Gashmim, the physical, in order they should be able to stay focused on their mandate for which they came down Alei Adamus into this world. Other Talmidei Hashem B'chlal, other leaders. Throughout history, for that matter, starting from Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov. And from then, in every generation, that's one of the mandates of the leader of a generation. To guide, to allow the people to focus on this which they're meant to focus on, even though the Alter Rebbe becomes very strong, not only to focus on this what we're meant to focus on, don't focus at all on this which you're not meant to focus on, or is none of your business, if you will. As I say, the goat has to know one thing: it does have to give milk. That's all. The one who owns the goat has to provide its grazing, its comfort, its barn, its water to drink, the ability to drink clean water. That's the business of the one who owns the goat. The goat has to know, give good milk. And that again is the mandate of not only the grand leaders, everyone is a leader one way or another. The leader on your one own self, family, society, everyone that has their positions. And this is the mandate to establish that you can stay focused. But the Alter Rebbe's Chiddush, this novelty in this chapter, the Alter Rebbe says, don't pay attention to it at all. And understandably, one doesn't pay attention to it at all when he is focused only on his or her mandate. The execution of the mandate is qualitatively different. Quantitatively different, of course, because you're focused on that, so you're spending more time. You're learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, and your mandate, learning Torah with another Yid, the mandate of the Tzavasha, always we have to always remember, every generation has its overall mandate, the mandate of this generation, not only to learn Torah yourself and do mitzvahs yourself, make sure another Yid, you put on tefillin that day, make sure another Yid puts on tefillin, make sure all Yidden put on tefillin. Perspective. In context, of course, whoever you have access to put on tefillin, you should make sure they were put on tefillin. For that matter, famous Gemara in Seita, that we took upon ourselves guarantorship when we received the Torah. From a certain perspective and point of view, important to underscore this, that if you had the opportunity that another Yid puts on tefillin and you didn't make the efforts, as if you didn't put on tefillin. And what would you do for chas v'shalom preventing yourself, for chas v'shalom not skipping a day of putting on tefillin? Everything. You'd be on a plane and you have the opportunity to go off the plane because you forgot your tefillin, and night falls in 2-3 hours and you're landing when it's dark. You're going to do everything to get off that plane because you need to put on tefillin. You do not want to miss a day of putting on tefillin. From the perspective of Torah, you have to make a similar effort to those who come your way, and today there's unfortunately so many who come our way, did not put on tefillin, that they keep a pair of tefillin, maybe an extra pair of tefillin with you, because you had an opportunity to put on that yid pair of tefillin, and you don't. From the perspective of Torah, look at Gemara Seita. It's one way or another as if you didn't put on tefillin. So today we have an additional mandate that every yid should do every mitzvah, teach Torah, teach Chassidus, Afotas, Hamayonis, Chutza, like the pasuk, Likishiyafutza Ma'nesecha Chutza, will ultimately wrap things up and usher in the Maisa Mashiach, like Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov when he had that aliyah as he entered the chamber of Mashiach. This is the mandate today, to learn Torah, do mitzvahs, do it perfectly, diligently, assiduously, but to do it with another party equally. This is the mandate of today's generation. So when one focuses solely on that, of course, it's a different type of, it's quantity. You're investing more quantity because you're not focusing on anything else. But of course, it's a qualitative type of, different type of, quality type of avodah, as opposed to you're focusing on the other things, other matters. One way or another, it's compromising, camouflages the passion of which is this diminuates the passion and the excitement and the soldiering forward on a constant basis. Yes, assiduously, in our mandate for which we were sent over here to establish for our Kodesh Baruch Hu. And sometimes we say trich tavermels on 10%, 20%, and before we turn around, we're focusing on a lot of stuff which is not associated with our mandate. Because therefore the Alter Rebbe says, don't have any desire, you focus on what you have to focus. Now, we're going to stop over here, even though we just went through a few lines. So two things, as you know, again, you got to hold on till the very end of this Yud Aleph to get the entire picture. It's profound, it's deep, and it's promising. Promising in a way that, yeah, the Rebbe is giving his berachas over it, or he's saying once there's perspective, everything will work out well. But two things before we land, and we conclude. The Alter Rebbe, the following words of Bir Ha'inyan. We're going to explain this even more. So, when Alter Rebbe, of course, feels that he has to explain more, because how could he tell this message is, of course, very strong for the human being, which a neshama is not divested of body and kind of from above, look there and don't look there. Focus on that and don't focus on that. We're a neshama invested in our body, with all these bodily needs, desires, covets, and things which, and of course, in a kosher way, not to even mention. So, how, we need the Bir Ha'inyan. We need to be a little more explained and elaborated on that, expanded on that. We should be able to really, truly, realistically, genuinely appreciate this message. So, Bez Hashem will continue next week. Bir Ha'inyan will be explained. And finally, one is going to say, oh, I'm not going to work today. I'm not going to look after my health. And let my kids eat whatever they want, drink whatever they want, do whatever they want, because a desire and health and healthy children and parnasa, no desire at all. No, just get up straight, davening and learning, and the rest is not important. And therefore I'm going to neglect the rest. I'm going to neglect it all. Anything associated with Ilam Haza? Wasn't my choice to come and tell him about Hashem sent me over here with a particular mandate and mission and job, and let me just focus on that. The rest, not for me. I just learned to the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, Leishum Mashum Rotzin Klal. The Alter Rebbe said it stronger than he says it the way he does. But of course, it's not the message of the Alter Rebbe. Of course, it's not the message of the Alter Rebbe. Understandably, And so naturally we have to live responsible lives. A yid has to make sure that he has a good parnasa. He has to make sure that he stays healthy. For that matter, very few things in the Torah it says ma'oid, just to note regarding one looking after their own health. Very few things Torah says ma'oid when it comes to looking after your own body. And looking after yourself, it says ma'oid, you have to take care of yourself very much and eat well and sleep well and do everything you need to do in order to maintain health, the blessing of health. Because sometimes people do a lot of stuff, and you need the Hebrews blessing for health, of course. And you have to make sure that you do whatever you can. The children should be healthy in all levels. And of course, appreciate the blessing of health, because many people do a lot of stuff and not necessarily Rahman al-Itzlan, may just stay in theory, as we repeat again and again. But to appreciate the blessing of healthy children, healthy in all levels. And of course, when it comes to livelihood, a person has to act responsibly, get up in the morning, and if he has to bring a certain parnasa, there's a certain bill which has a denomination. And at the end of the month, this is the beginning of the month, whatever, this has to be paid for mortgage, and this has to be paid for tuition, and this is paid for the car, whatever life entails. Of course, you have to do the best you can, and beyond that, and everything underlined with a notion of full responsibility for yourself, for your family, that you, at least, that the ends meet towards the end of the month. And if you have to put bread on your table, make sure there's bread on the table. On the Shabbos, there's challah and wine and candles for the native Shabbos kosher and fish and whatever it takes to live as a healthy human being. And we ought to do it responsibly. That's not the Alter Rebbe's message at all. And for that matter, we don't have to negate this. Besides the fact, knowing who the Alter Rebbe was, and was one of the most organized people in all of history, and that Rebbe lived his life in a very organized manner, and he demanded from his people organization and neatness and responsibility. What the Alter Rebbe is telling us over here is, you have to do what you have to do. We're talking about focus, motivation, aspiration, desire. I want it to be exactly like that. And I want this to be like that. And I want my parnasa to look like that. And I'm become motivated. And I want my house to look like that. And I want my dining room to look like that. And sometimes I even enter into areas I want my dishes to look like that. Or whatever. And it's maybe sometimes okay. Because again, anything which contributes to stability of mind, it's fine to do what you have to do, but don't have that fire, that passion, that motivation, that aspiration for all this. And of course, the difference of the two is, Rahman al-Itzlan, again, may it stay in theory only. May it just be a concept, not a reality. But Rahman al-Itzlan, when someone's fancy is tickled, when their Hashem, for whatever reason, tickles their fancy one way or another, in any of the three, therein lies the difference. If someone is excited about Bana Chaim Zaina, and the moment something is compromised, they lose themselves, and everything starts tumbling. And perhaps as a human being, rightfully so, from the perspective of human being, we're not talking about something in an unkosher way. Rightfully, again, from the perspective of pre-Yud Aleph, pre-Laskil Chabina, and Igeres HaKodesh. But when you start learning the Laskil Chabina, and the Alter Rebbe is establishing and demanding perspective at 100% perspective, then Rahman, some of things don't go exactly right. It's his issue. It's not my issue. I don't want it precisely that way. He decided to be a bit different. Shall it be a bit different? Because I don't have any of these desires. Because I'm here for one reason only, to do my mandate. And I don't have any aspiration to this stuff or motivation to this stuff. Do I have to do what I have to do? Of course I have to do. And I have to do it right and responsibly. And it should be all the way it's meant to be, without headaches and so on. and look after myself and ask the Eibishter for healthy children. Of course I have to do, but the motivation, the desire, the pumping of the heart, the passion is in matters for which I was sent to this world, to learn Torah, to do mitzvahs, to bring all Yidden into the fold, and to be ready for Mashiach to come. And as Alter Rebbe is going to explain, because I'm focused, I have faith that Hashem, in the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I know Hashem, there's no typos in Hashem's script, if you will. And therefore, I remain solely focused on my mandate. Loi shum rotzen klal, desire, motivation, passion. No, but again, we will conclude today's class. Again, anything negative should only stay in theory and only stay in concept. And namely, finally, over here in conclusion of today's class, the end of the day, the end of the Pedic, which is the end of the day, the Alter Rebbe says, points out that once Hashem, which is a Beichin Koyes Valev, which examines heart and intestines, he knows exactly what we are focusing on or what we're not focusing on, and what we're aspiring to. Once he sees that the Yid earnestly places perspective in his entire package of life as of Yid, Hashem turns things around. As the Lashon Alter Rebbe will conclude today's classes with these words: Nasa ubemuno zu be'emes, and with this faith, with that focus, with that perspective, Nasa hakoil toiv gam begolui. Everything ultimately becomes good, also in a revealed, in a manifest fashion. So it's important, again, even at this juncture, to mention this with Alter Rebbe is going to conclude the entire chapter. Of course, we need to understand it from beginning to the end. Alter Rebbe is going to go on with a Bir ha'inyan. Hopefully, we'll continue on this important journey this coming week. Abba Leinu L'Teva, Gesundheit und Freilichkeit.